Good morning everybody, how are you all today? I hope you're all grand. Today I'm going to prick out my celery and I can't wait, even though it's a really annoyingly fiddly job. Now I thought today actually I would just tell you about my previous celery experience because it wasn't great, so hopefully we can all learn from each other. So I decided, I think it was 3 years ago, to give celery a go for the first time. I was dead excited to give it a go. Brilliant. Out of about 100 seeds I sowed, I ended up with 8 plants and they were absolutely rubbish. I had a couple of nibbles, absolute disaster. The next year, determined to not be beaten by such a disaster, I thought, well, I'll have another go, but I'll do things slightly differently. And I think I kind of cracked it, or at least I hoped I did. So then last year, which is my 3rd year of growing them, I replicated what I'd done in the 2nd year and it seemed to work. So I'm going to share that with you now. They need quite a bit of warmth to get going. So these were sown, I'm racing through my brain now trying to remember when they were sown, end of February, actually just about the beginning of March, so maybe 5 weeks ago. Actually it's more like 6 weeks, isn't it? So they need a bit of warmth to get going. Now I don't use heated propagators, I don't use heat mats, grow lights, any of that kind of stuff. I'm trying as much as possible to just grow with Mother Nature. I know some people have to use those things because they just don't have the light and heat. That's fine, but for me, I'm just working with Mother Nature. So without a heated propagator, I did use a propagator. I put it in my south-facing window, and at night time I also covered the whole lot, including the propagator lid, with some bubble wrap just for a little bit of extra protection during the evening, because although that window faces south, beginning of March, with the thermometer on there, it was getting down to about 14-15 degrees at night, so bubble wrap too. Now here's where I think I went wrong in that first year. There are a couple of things. I had read and understood that they were related to a bog plant and they liked to be kept nice and moist. However, I think when they were in the propagator, I overwatered them, which meant that quite a few damped off. Also, when the seedlings were first showing, during the day I would take the propagator lid off to let them have some air. And there were a few occasions when I forgot to take the lid off completely. I think I was on night shifts, coming home from work at sort of 10 in the morning, going straight to bed, get up at 5 in the afternoon, had my bath, off to work. Basically I forgot them for a few days, so the lid stayed on during the day. And I think a combination of the heat and also masses of humidity trapped inside meant that a load more damped off. The ones that survived all that, and I think there were about 40 odd little seedlings that survived, I was waiting and waiting and waiting for more true leaves to come before pricking them out. And they just weren't coming. They weren't coming, they weren't coming. I waited and waited. And I think it wasn't until, I think it was into July before I first pricked them out. Once I pricked them out, they did get going a little bit, not great, and again some more damped off. Finally I got 8 plants to put into the ground, put them in a nice little row, but I think I spaced them too far apart as well and didn't keep them wet enough, and they just didn't come to anything. So what did I do the 2nd year? I started them off in the propagator again, but I was very vigilant about removing the propagator lid, not having them quite so wet. So basically none of them damped off, which was great. And then they got to, I'm just going to show you this year's because it was at a similar stage. They got to about this, whoopsie, they got to about this stage with maybe 1 or 2 true leaves. And it was at that point that I started to prick them out. And what I found was that the minute I pricked them out, suddenly they just came to life. They just went bonkers. Within a couple of weeks they had 5 or 6 leaves. They were looking lush, quite, you know, robust, chunky little plants. And then by the end of, actually not even the end, by about the middle of May, we were having some decent weather. I took the whole lot down to the cold frame, gave them a couple of weeks to harden off. Yeah, so I gave them a couple of weeks to harden off. Sorry for that slight hiatus. Battery ran out. Rookie error, I thought I charged it, never mind. Yeah, gave them a couple of weeks to harden off and then planted them out into the garden. But this time I planted them all much more closely, so only about 15 centimetres between plants in the row and 15 centimetres between the rows. And if any of you have seen those videos that Sean made, you'll see that they were great little plants. Now the variety I use is called Green Utah. I can't remember how I even came to pick this one. I think it was probably because it's not a trenching type of celery. So a lot of the old celeries you would grow in a trench and gradually earth them up. Firstly, I can't be bothered with all that faff and nonsense. Once it's in the ground, it's got to do its thing. Excuse me. So I think that's probably why I picked this one, because it's what they call a self-blanching type. Now in truth, it doesn't really blanch at all. So if you think of the celery you get in the supermarket, those kind of long white stalks, very stiff stalks, this one doesn't produce anything like that. They stay green, they don't get that long, but oh my goodness, they pack a flavour punch like you can't even begin to imagine. Seriously, even in that first year when the plants weren't great, that first nibble of my own celery, part of the reason I tried again was because the taste was out of this world compared with shop bought, and I thought I have to have another go. I have to be able to get my own harvest because this is gorgeous. And sure enough, when I tried again in that second year and got my decent harvest, I literally haven't looked back. It is now one of those must-haves in the allotment. It's quite interesting, if I pick a couple of stalks, if I don't use them that day, they go really, really floppy in the fridge. What I find a bit scary is that shop-bought stuff, you can leave in the fridge for 2 weeks and it's still really stiff and firm. Kind of makes me question it somewhat. Anyway, so if you haven't grown it before, give it a go. It's a little bit late for saying now. You could look in for a penny, in for a pound, give it a go. Just to say, actually, with this packet, it comes with 475 seeds. So if you are thinking of having a go, maybe club in with a mate, because who needs 475 seeds? Yeah, give it a go, because the taste is, it's so different to that white blanched shop bought stuff. You will not regret it, I promise. And actually, because it's so flavoursome, well, I found I use considerably less. So if I was doing a recipe where maybe I would use 4 or 5 stalks from shop bought, I find that I'm only using a couple. And also what's lovely with your homegrown, you get the leaf as well, because in the shops all the leaves are cut off. Why did they cut the leaves off? I don't know. Anyway, so let's have a little go at pricking out. It's really fiddly because they are so tiny, so I'm hoping this is all going to pick up, but you'll get the gist anyway. Let's just angle you down so you can have a little look. So as I say, these were sown about 6 weeks ago in the little paper pots. What I do when I'm getting to this stage to prick out, sorry, multitasking, is rather than trying to, as you might with, say, a small pot that you've got a single plant in, say with the tomatoes, where you'd sort of tip and bang, what I quite often do with the paper pots is quite simply cut down the edge, open it up. So I didn't water these yesterday after their little sunny windowsill session, just to make them a little bit easier to get out. But you can see now, oh, they are so fiddly. I mean, they're such delicate, delicate little plants. Now, I'm just going to try and tease them apart a little. Look at that great chunk of wood in my compost. So just gently by their leaves. Is it going to come? There we go. So when you are handling them, don't handle them by their stalks, because that's definitely the most delicate part. I think, whoopsie, I think in that first year that I grew them, part of the reason I didn't prick them out sooner was because they are so teeny tiny, sort of fiddly, pathetic looking, and I just thought, I can't, there's no way I can handle those to prick them out yet, they're far too small. However, like I say, in that second year when I went for it a bit earlier, it seemed actually to be exactly what they needed. Now from that past experience I also learned that once I've pricked them out they will just sort of look a bit spindly and flop over a bit. I'll give them a really, really gentle watering. Just on the subject of watering, I've got my little indoor watering can with a rose on it so that I can give it a really fine sprinkling. Something I would say about watering, both for the indoors and my cold frame veggies, is that I always keep a couple of watering cans in the window where the seedlings are getting away, plus keep a watering can in the cold frame, because if you think at this time of year, both the cold frame and the windowsill are getting to about 35 degrees during the day with all that sun on them. I don't want to then go and get cold water out of a tap or out of the water tank on the allotment and water everything with freezing cold water. What a shock to the system. So yeah, so I keep my watering cans on the windowsill, and I would keep a watering can in the cold frame so that when it comes to watering, that water will have sat in the can all day, warming up with the seedlings, so that hopefully when I give them water it's not too much of a shock for them. So what I'll do with these little guys, I'll carry on pricking out in a minute, but maybe off camera because I'll probably start swearing in a minute because it's so fiddly, is once they're all in, I'll give them a really, really gentle water, not too much today, and then tomorrow hopefully they'll have perked up a bit. Just chat to you guys again. So yeah, hopefully tomorrow they'll have perked up a bit and I'll give them a bit more of a soaking. And we just wait and see and hope for the best, like we do with everything. It's interesting, when I did the celeriac earlier, they went in right at the beginning of February because I understood that they needed a really long season. I have never grown it before, so I sort of tackled it in the same sort of way, so that when they were really tiny at this stage, that's when I pricked them out. They've both been a bit of a learning curve. The celery's definitely been a learning curve, and part of that was because there was no one on my site growing it, which is kind of amazing if you think out of 60 odd plots no one was growing celery. So I had no one to ask, I had no one to get advice from. And I think when you're looking in the books and the seed catalogues and packets and things, it will tell you when to sow things under glass, when to plant them out. But the in-between bit from sowing to planting out, where'd you get that advice from? Normally it would be from a body down on the allotment, but if no one's growing it, so I would say with any veg, if it's new to you, give it a go, be optimistic, but then if things don't work out too well, don't be too downhearted, put it down to learning, have a little think about what you might do differently next time. You know, always give something another go, don't give up on the first attempt. Some years it's just a bad year for X, Y or Z veg. So I heartily recommend growing your own celery. Give it a go. Don't keep them too damp when they're at the seedling stage. And then when you do get your harvest, oh, enjoy that first stalk raw. Nibble on it as you're walking around your garden, because you will not get over the taste. And I'm assuring you right now that if you do grow your own, you won't go back to shop bought. So I'm going to get on with this little lot. I'm going to hopefully transplant about 70 in the hopes that I get about 50 plants for the plot, and then that's kind of 1 plant a week, which is perfectly sufficient for me and my needs. So let me get on with this. You guys get back out into the garden or whatever it is you're doing, and for now I will say cheerio and happy experimenting. See you next time.